Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today we will be presenting the problem titled Corruption of Knowledge. In Islam, knowledge holds a special place and it is seen as amanah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Surah Al-Mujadalah verses 11, Allah highlights the importance of seeking knowledge and how Allah honors those people who seek knowledge by raising the darajat. But when knowledge loses its true purpose and guidance, it becomes corrupted. So today I'm going to define what is corruption of knowledge and how we see this issue in the Muslim world. According to Sheikh Muhammad Nuqai al-Atas, the corruption of knowledge happens when people lose adab, means that they no longer respect the knowledge properly. Because of it, knowledge is not used in the right way. People mix up between haq and batil, true and false, and causing confusion between it. In Surah Al-Baqarah verse 42, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, وَلَا تَلْبِسُوا الْحَقَّ بِالْبَاطِلِ وَتَكْتُمُوا الْحَقَّ وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. As a Muslim, real knowledge must be based on two things, which are first, a revelation al-wahy from Allah SWT to the Prophet Muhammad SAW. Second, a reason al-aqlu. Without both, knowledge can be easily misused and mislead people away from the truth. Sheikh Muhammad Nuqai al-Atas defined the corruption of knowledge happens when knowledge is separated from its real purpose, which is to understand the true nature of things and to acknowledge Allah as the ultimate power and truth in the world. When people use the knowledge to get rich, become famous, and gain power, actually they lose the real purpose of knowledge. Instead of seeking truth and living according to Allah's guidance, the knowledge become corrupted and lose its purity. Second, corruption of knowledge also happens when people lose adab, means that they forget the right manners, discipline, and respect towards the knowledge. As Sheikh Muhammad Nuqai al-Atas mentioned in his book, a corruption of knowledge begins when one loses adab. Without adab, then the knowledge become lost, twisted, and also forget its real purpose. At the end, people get confused and cannot differentiate between true and false, haq and batil. But with adab, the knowledge guides us to living rightly and stay close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is important to bring back adab while learning, so the knowledge stay in the right path. With adab, people can tell what is right and what is wrong. If we combine worldly things and religious knowledge, we can find the real truth and living rightly according to Allah's guidance. Thank you.
Now, let us move to the first type of corruption of knowledge, which is philosophical corruption. So how did this philosophical corruption actually happen? It happens when Islamic metaphysics is influenced by Greek and also non-Islamic philosophies. So ideas like Neoplatonism and also Aristotelianism were introduced and has caused a lot of confusion among Muslims, moving them away from the pure Islamic understanding itself. So over time, some of these Muslims, they starting to depend too much on human reasoning and started to ignore the revelation. So at the end of the day, we see that it created a conflict between rationalism and also revelation, where now the reason has placed above the divine guidance, and it leads to a distorted view of metaphysical truth in Islam. Next, another type of corruption of knowledge is knowledge secularization. This happens when knowledge is separated from its divine roots and causing a false division between the sacred and also the secular. Knowledge is now no longer seen as a way to get closer to Allah or to understand our high purpose, but only function as a tool for material progress. As a result, education becomes focused only on worldly success. Meanwhile, the moral and also the spiritual values are ignored. Secularism encourages knowledge that serves only the physical and economic needs without addressing the ethical or spiritual aspects of human life, and this leads to an unbalanced Muslim society. Then, the last type of corruption of knowledge is language and key concepts corruption. Language is not just about words, but it actually carries a lot of meanings, values, and also worldviews. when core Islamic terms or Islamic concepts words are translated or explained using Western framework, we risk losing their original depth and also intent. For example, the word ad-din in Islam means a complete way of life based on divine guidance, but in the West, they have reduced this meaning to just be a personal belief separate from ethics and also law. Similarly, the word al-ain in Islam is a sacred trust that nurtures wisdom, which is al-hikmah, and good characters, which is al-adab. But in the secular view, it is seen as value neutral and only for worldly use. Hence, at the end of the day, we see that this redefinition causes confusion and weakens the Islamic worldview at its core.
Moving on to the factors of corruption of knowledge, first is the separation of political and intellectual leadership. So after the fall of the Caliphate, the political leadership became dominated by tribal and ethnocentric values, while the religious scholars withdrew from public life. So this rift led to a disconnect between Islamic principles and governance, leaving the intellectual leadership isolated and focused narrowly on textual studies rather than addressing societal challenges. So this resulted in a lack of innovative thought and stagnation in addressing contemporary issues, leading to a decline in the application of Islamic knowledge to real-world problems. Moving on, the second one is neglection of social sciences. Islamic scholarship became overly focused on ritual and personal law, which we call fiqh or fiqh, neglecting the development of social sciences like economics, education, or politics rooted in Islamic principles. So this limited the scope of Islamic knowledge to individual piety rather than societal reform. Without Islamic frameworks for social sciences, Muslims eventually adopted foreign ideologies like Western secular models, which often conflicted with Islamic values and failed to address the Ummah's special needs. Lastly, the rejection of contemporary relevance. So many scholars view Islam as a historical relic rather than a living system, while it rejects the needs to address modern issues like technology, democracy, or human rights. So this left Ummah dependent on foreign ideologies like nationalism or Marxism, or we call as Marxism, further corrupting Islamic knowledge.
Next, we move to the impacts of corruption of knowledge. For the first one is confusion and error in knowledge of Islam. In this situation, knowledge becomes disconnected from its divine and source, which means people confuse opinion with truth, natural knowledge with spiritual insight. And the result fragmented worldviews where Islamic knowledge is compartmentalized and secularized, which is this lead to the intellectual and spiritual errors among Muslims. This information from book The Concept of Education in Islam by Sheikh Muhammad Naqib Al-Attash. Next, we move to the second impact of corruption of knowledge is loss of adab within the community. That means lost the ability to distinguish what is right from wrong, what is higher from lower, or what is more deserving from what is less. The problem here, everyone claims equal authority on matters that they are not qualified in. Example here is unlearned people speaking on religious rulings. Or other example is follow false leaders and influences over true scholars and wise individuals, which is result in the breakdown community discipline. This information from the book The Concept of Education in Islam by Sheikh Muhammad Naqib Al-Attash. The impact corruption of knowledge is unqualified leaders, which means here the rise of leaders who are not qualified for varied leadership of the Muslim community and individual assigned to position of power without possessing qualification that Islam requires for leadership, which is moral integrity, intellectual capability, and spiritual maturity. The impact from the rise of such leaders leads to spiritual and social crises in the Muslim community. This information from book The Concept of Education in Islam by Sheikh Muhammad Naqib Al-Attas.
Next up, let us move on to the next point, which is the solution. So, first of all, how do we resolve the confusion and errors in knowledge of Islam? So, first of all, we have to revive rigorous and critical methodology, which bring us to think deeply and critically before simply copying others' action without understanding the meaning and the consequences of their actions. Abu Sulaiman believes that blind imitation lies at the root of Muslim stagnation, but so-called modern ijtihad is not up to the task. Which means that if a Muslim follows all the revelation of Allah, which is from Quran and Sunnah, their actions shall lead them to a success, and they should be protected from the azab in this dunya and akhirah. Next up is reform education, which means that all fields should be aligned with the principle of emphasizing critical thinking and holistic understanding of Islam, which Abu Sulaiman himself believed that education should be essential of resolving confusion. And he says that curricula should be more emphasizing more on critical thinking and holistic understanding of Islam rather than memorizing and critical acceptance of any tradition. Last but not least is to promote intellectual renewal and engagement. So Abu Sulaiman says that Abu Sulaiman believes that a crisis usually not starts from someone's beliefs, but it based on how us as Muslims think and our reason. Therefore, he urged us to participate more in society activities that encourage us to have a critical thinking in ourselves. This could bring Islam names relevance. Moving on to the next solution, which is the solution to an unqualified leaders problem within the Muslim community. So first of all, we as a Muslim, we should always aware and believe that leadership is an amanah from Allah. So a leader should be aware of their roles as a Khalifa who governs according to a divine guidance, which means that a leader must be conscious of their responsibility to serve Allah and community with justice and integrity, not for their personal gain and powers. Because as in Islam, it is mentioned that we as a Muslim, all of us are a Khalifa. Therefore, each one of us has that amanah that cannot be taken lightly, because Allah has promised that He will bring it all up and judge our action on the day of judgment. So therefore, with this kind of mentality, this kind of mindset, one will be more responsible of their action and decision making, particularly those leaders, which they will surely make a better decision because they are scared of Allah's azab. And next up is by recognizing the qualification through education and adab, which leaders must be properly educated and possess a good adab, which is a comprehensive moral and ethical manners. And by Al-Attas believe that he describes that a good leader as a man of adab who combines knowledge and spiritual with moral refinement, since education of knowledge essential for both leaders and followers to fulfill their roles responsibly.